If at any point in time in my life, and particularly in that year of 2015 when I was making decisions that were solely for myself, that I hurt anyone, I'm very sorry. Welcome to the What's Your Revolution show, a show for men and the people who love them, where we discuss how men can find and embrace the revolution within themselves, where people can find and embrace the revolution within themselves. I am your host, joined by my dude, my friend, my brother, my co-host. I forgot to say who I am. I'm Dr. Charles Corporate, but I'm joined by my dude, my friend, and my co-host, Dr. Travis Batz.
We are here, man. We're here. You know, we back again. We back again.
We are back again for our recurring series of conversation called Revolt and Evolve, where two well-educated Black men with PhDs and MDs talk about everything from under the sun as we think about how to be the most revolutionary versions of ourselves. We have done, this is episode number 7 or 8, I don't know, but it has been one of the most talked about shows that we've had throughout the year, this recurring conversation with Dr. Batz and myself, as we think through some of the things that our guests have said on the show, things that are actually happening in our lives, and then how do we drop down, is my favorite thing. How do we drop down to really do a deep dive into what's going on in our lives and how that really can help you all, our revolutionaries, in becoming the most revolutionary version of yourself. Dr. Batz, I want to start this show with this, and I've been thinking about this because I've been excited about this conversation. One, before I even say that, I just want to thank you. Gratitude is something that is really, really big for me. And there has never been a point in time where I cannot pick up the phone and say, I need to talk, brother. And that's what we need, right? We need the ability to make sure that I can pick up the phone. When I say I'm talking about you, we as humans have the ability to pick up the phone and call someone, particularly in times of need. And over the last few weeks, dear brother, as you know, as I have been, dealing with life has been lifing.
Right.
I just want to say thank you for picking up the phone and allowing me to talk through the life things that have been happening. I am very gracious and hold tremendous gratitude and respect for who you are as a human. And thank you for showing up, emotionally, intelligently showing up, and being my friend. And I truly appreciate that, Dr. Batz. I just want to say that.
Well, again, so thank you for allowing me, right? Because it goes back, and I know we're at a serious point, but it goes back, and this commercial is interesting. It's the commercial with Tim Tebow in the Heisman house, and he's creating opportunities to help, right? But sometimes people don't want to ask for help, or when help comes, it is a period of vulnerability. And I can tell you that the feeling has been reciprocated, right? Meaning there are times when I said, hey, look, I'm working through this, and like I say, I exist in a binary space, and I always say, is this a listen or a fix? With you, you listen and then you provide fixes, and so I appreciate that. And I don't think from a mindset standpoint, from a health standpoint, right? I would be where I am on this journey without your knowledge, your availability, your insight, right? Coach/mentor, right? They are melded in two when it comes to you. So thank you, my brother. Thank you again. And reciprocate, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I can give a shout out to my good friend, my travel partner, my travel buddy, like my dude, Kappas, bro. I don't understand, what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But give a shout out to my boy, Dr. Derek Greenfield, and thanking him for all that he is in the world and the ability to have a wonderful friendship with him. One of the things that we do, Dr. Batz, is that when we have conversations, and we had to get to this inflection point of our friendship, is that there are a number of times when we'll call each other and we'll ask the question, what do you need from me right now? Do you need me to listen? Do you need me to give you advice? Do you need me to pick up something and go kill someone? You know what I'm saying? Usually it's never the third one. But usually,
Right.
typically, I've never asked the third one, but it's like, do you need me to listen? Do you need me to give you advice? Do you need me to steer you? And oftentimes, Dr. Batz, we just need folks to listen to us. What I have found, and you probably can echo this, is that sometimes saying things out loud to someone else, you hear, wow, okay, this sounds a little crazy. You know what I'm saying? This sounds a little wild. Or, you know what, I just needed to get it out. And, you know, and our mutual good friend, Dr. Elijah Beatty, there are a lot of doctors. Dr. Elijah Beatty, we do the same thing. And, you know, he'll end the call. He's like, just thank you for listening. And that's important. The power of
Wow.
listening is important in friendship. Speak to that. Speak to that power of listening, Dr. Batz.
So, and again, I think listening, and we always say we got one mouth and 2 ears, so you're supposed to listen twice as much. Yeah, it makes sense anatomically. But when you actually think about it practically, there are therapeutic as well as relational benefits to listening more and being quiet. Like sometimes it's listening to what's not said.
Yeah.
And this goes back to that construct of do you want IQ or EQ? IQ being that,
Mm,
intelligence and what you can figure out, but EQ is reading the room and sensing those non spoken emotional cues and communicating in that space. But that first starts by listening, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
listening, we think is this process with our ears, but it's more of a process with our mind. It's more of a process of understanding what the other individual is saying to us, whether verbal or nonverbal, and then doing things that we know to either bring that out if we need to, or
Hmm.
cultivate an environment where number one, they feel safe. Number two, they feel heard, whether spoken or unspoken. And number three, they feel like you provide at least a sounding board, not always a solution. And I think that's something that I had to work toward. And I'm my wife is in our relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because I always hear from her and I'm like, okay, I got to fix. And she's like, no, 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 fall back. I just listen first, but I'm ready to go, right? And so it is taking that pause and trying to reevaluate what that person needs for you. And I think
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
toughest thing because it's always what you want to give to them, but it might not be exactly what they need. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the keys
Yes.
to active listening, so to speak.
Yeah. No, brother, you have put it in a wonderful box as you do so, and that's what our fans talk about this show is that Dr. Batts is always dropping pearls. He's always dropping pearls, those 20 pearls. But yeah, that's what it is, and that's a skill set that I have to say that is a skill set that can be honed. Because typically, as we think about this, and revolutionaries, I want you to think about the next time you're in that conversation with your loved ones. Um, can you step back and just listen? And oftentimes we will give advice from our own lived experiences. Well, that's not my lived experience, right?
Hmm.
And when I want advice, right, and I'll say that when I want advice, I'll ask. And I'm one of those stubborn folks, I'm like, I didn't ask for your help. What I
Right.
asked for in this moment is just someone to listen. And it gets me back to what I'm saying is that when we have the power to listen to our loved ones, to our friends, even to strangers on the street, is an interesting thing. I think we give them the ability to be present with themselves because we can tell stories in our head oftentimes about situations, but when we say
Hmm.
out loud, when we say things out loud, sometimes you're like, "Ooh, maybe that story is not the exact story." And then when we have vulnerability and when we have trust, when we have that circle of people that we bring into our lives, then we say, "You know what? I I really would like your advice on this. I would really like your support on this. I would really like to hear what you're thinking." But that comes with trust, right? And that gets me all the way back to the beginning of this conversation with thanking you because I asked you for advice after you so eloquently listened to me and you gave me good advice. And again, thank you. Thank you for listening
I
and
appreciate that.
thank you for establishing a relationship with me that allows us to trust each other, to be vulnerable with each other, and then to be able to give each other support and advice that we need to move into our most revolutionary version of ourselves.
Thank you. No, again, I appreciate the opportunity, and if there's ever any question, I'm here, right?
Yes.
I'm here, available, and want that. And I know that there are folks listening that say, how did you all develop that relationship
That's a
over,
great
to
question.
be
Yeah.
honest, a relatively short amount of time?
Yeah.
And I wish I had a great acronym for it, but I don't. It was I don't. I got a few ready just in case we
I'm
take a
sure you
pathway.
do.
But
Burn.
but no, it was literally just the tenure of time,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
was the
The
tenure of
tenure of
time,
time.
yeah, that
Yeah.
allowed kind of these two folks that were brought together by, like I said, a wonderful individual. Shout out
Mhm.
Dr. Elijah Beatty. Um, and he didn't know how we would, but he assumed, right? We
Yeah.
had the same
Yeah.
energy that things would work out. But I would have never imagined from that discussion that we had, and me listening to the show, and you empowering me with those words, rock star cardiologist. Like I never thought about. But
Star
now,
cardiologist.
I wear glasses in a dark room because of that. I mean, that's what I do as a rock star. But
Mrs. Batz, come get him.
she can't reel me back. It's too late now. It's too late. It's the train is off.
Train is out the
But it
door.
was that, and then slowly, just those conversations, shared shared points of pain. Right,
Yeah.
we had a similar shared experience in the health space, kind of shared points of power and triumph,
Yeah.
right, where we are trying to dismantle, deconstruct, these societal norms that say some people can't and other people's can, right? That fight to develop that, and I think over time it's created this bond, right?
Yeah.
As interesting as it is, I think we both fill in some of the blanks that, let's say, I had, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you had. And I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
and I know people, after they say, okay, that's the how, it was time, but how did you know it was the right person you want? Right. And this brings me back to a show. And I'm not great with names, but he was the licensed marriage counselor that talks
Chris
about,
Matthews.
there you go. If you
Yeah.
haven't got that book, and I'm listening to it on audiobook, I think I bought
Yeah.
it. And it's more than just, so if you're saying, well, I'm not married or I don't want to get, that book is about building you can apply those same tenets. And you have 4 tenets of, being heard, being safe,
Yeah.
understanding.
Mhm.
It was those tenets that when you go into your organizational meeting, it was when you go into, you're the new CEO and you want to develop a plan or a process. It was those same tenets that you can apply to all those areas about building relationships with people to develop, again, that ability to listen and the
Yeah.
ability to develop relationships that are both. Relationships have to have 2 parts. They have to be real, right?
Yeah.
And they have to be personal. And that's where you truly find the power of the relational nature that exists
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
individuals. It has to be
Yeah.
real and it
That's
has to be personal.
personal, real and personal. And you said it in the beginning. Time. Typically a good
Right.
core friendship takes about 75 to 90 hours,
Wow.
right, to begin to proliferate. You think about that. 75 to 90 hours. So they're
Mm,
not that's the personal aspect of that. 75 to 90 hours of time together. And we
mm.
haven't had that much time, but we've had a lot of time together. We've had a lot
Yeah,
of time. And we've
we're
never met in
close.
person. Revolutionaries, we've never met in person. You
I keep
know?
trying.
Y-
He finds other stuff to, oh, I'm gonna be, that day, I'm gonna be, and I
on the
ain't one of them
beach.
pop-up cats. I ain't one of them pop-up cats.
I
I ain't
run
gonna pop
away.
up,
I well, what happens is that I run away from pink Henleys, but so that's what it is. That's what it is. But let me get to this. Let me get to
Game
this. Let
time.
me get to this. Yeah, I said I wasn't gonna clown you today. I am, but
I'm ready.
um,
I've been waiting.
we gonna be serious. We definitely gonna be serious. People have asked me, Dr. Batz, why I started this show. And I could give a lot of reasons why. I could give the PC, the public reason why I started this show. And the show wasn't the impetus of the show came well before the show was ever aired. And I don't know if I've ever told this story on the show, Dr. Bass, and I figured it was time. It was time for me to tell like this story of my journey of like getting to a better version of myself. And in 2015, I broke up with my ex-fiance, who I think is one of the greatest humans on earth, in January of 2015. And I didn't care about anybody. I mean, when I say that, I didn't care about anybody but myself. Literally, literally nobody. And I did things that represented my sole care about my pleasure, right? And my sole understanding that life revolved around me. And I didn't care about anybody else. I didn't care about
Mm-hmm.
my friends. I didn't care about the people that I was with. I cared about myself. And I did things that I regret. I did things back then. This version of me looks back and says, you know what? Nah. But I remember late in 2015 walking into my therapist's office and saying to him these words, Dr. Batz: I'm a piece of shit. Because I had known that I had done things under the sole understanding, the auspices, that it didn't matter what anybody else thought. It was just about me. And I knew that I needed to change my life. I knew that I needed to turn around. I needed to care about something greater than myself. So I walked into the therapist's office and said, I'm a piece of shit and I don't want to feel like this anymore. And so for the last 8 years, I have worked on me. I've worked on being a better human, being a better man, being a better son, being a better godfather, being a better friend, being a better frat brother, being better at showing up for myself, being very self-aware, being understanding the frailties of who I am as a human, being also understanding that at some point I needed to give myself grace for the past versions of myself. And so I say this here, Dr. Batz, and we can get into this, is that if at any point in time in my life, and particularly in that year of 2015 when I was making decisions that were solely for myself, that I hurt anyone, I'm very sorry. I am very sorry. And that this version of me understands the pain that I may have caused at that period in time. And again, I say that I am sorry and I regret those things. But I also hold space and grace for the person that I am now. And I juxtapose that person who I was to the person I am now. And I am thankful for my therapist, Al Sidholm, who walks me through this journey every month now. But we went through weeks and weeks and weeks of therapy to unearth where I was and where I wanted to go as a human. And so I'm going to hope, Dr. Batz, that those folks that know me today, that stand beside me like you and Armand Davis and Dr. Derek Greenfield and Dr. Elijah Beatty and Dr. Phil Eccles and my boy Quince Griffin, who's been there since day one, who understand, that have seen the journey of Charles Corprew, can understand that we all grow and that there is grace for the versions that we all have, that we are not perfect, but we can also forgive ourselves and forgive others. And so I'll end this diatribe in saying this, is that we have the ability to grow. We have the ability to be self-aware. We have the ability to acknowledge the pain that we have put on ourselves and the pain that we have put on others.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can acknowledge that and move forward and give grace to ourselves and give grace to others and forgive, in my opinion, that's the revolution. And that is why I do this show. That is why I started this show almost 7 years ago, to talk about how men like myself, who found themselves looking at the mirror and saying, I'm a piece of shit, and that I wanted to be better. I wanted to be the most revolutionary version of myself, and I have worked diligently and fervently to not be that person, to look in this mirror every day, Dr. Batz, and say, you know what, I kind of like this version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of happy with this version of myself. Are there struggles? Do I make mistakes? Yes, we all do. But this version of myself looks back and says, you know what? I'm going to give you a little grace. You didn't do the right thing then, but we're going to do the right thing now. Would love to get your thoughts on that, Dr. Batz.
And that was, well, first off, I think it's beautiful that you can have these self-actualizations and really embrace the newer version. And I say embrace for that very reason, right? So in your mind's eye, seeing those older versions happy of where you've become. And I think that's something that we don't value when it comes to this construct of forgiveness, right? It's a
Yeah,
construct
yeah.
to
It's
think about
construct,
it,
yeah.
right? And when you look at that construct, it involves at least two things. At least there may be more, but there is one thing to recognize a wrong, whether that's in you or in someone else.
Yeah,
But the second thing is when you send that out and say, I recognize, and you send it to another person, it still has to be received.
yeah.
And the difficulty is forgiveness is almost like sending a text and getting ghost, not getting anything. Okay, I mean, because when you were talking, now granted, this is just I just see it, right? And you send that out, and the hardest person is yourself, right? Is yourself to say, well, man, I was that. But what people have to understand, whether it's themselves, whether it's a family member, whether it's a close friend, is that forgiveness speaks to more of not perfection, but of progress.
Yeah,
Because you have to
yeah,
recognize, right? And so in medical, and I'll loop it to medical malpractice, and anyone out there that is, it is this construct of these four parts of medical tort, right? First, you have to decide that there's been a breach, right?
yeah.
Something has gone on where you've done
Yeah,
something wrong, right? Forgiveness is the same way. You have to recognize, okay, I did something wrong. Then you have to determine what your duty is. What was my duty in that situation to make what choice that I didn't make and it caused a problem? The next one is you have to look at causation. And I think this is the place where people get caught up because causation suggests that you intentionally did an act to hurt someone, including yourself, to attain a goal. And you said, I was a person that did things solely for myself. I don't think the intent was to hurt anybody else. You were, doing, now, if there was, that's a whole,
no, no, there was
that's
no intent.
right, no
No intent
intent,
to hurt.
right? So that's that causation piece. But then the final piece is one that no one is exonerated from. It's damage. What damage
Yeah,
occurred in that construct? Now, in medical malpractice, this usually leads to, lawyers going back and forth. But in personal, and I'll use this term, I don't know if people, personal malpractice, things that you've done either to yourself or someone else that have impacted your ability to grow, evolve into your true version, you have to go through your own diagnosis of where you are, where you're going, and ultimately where you want to be.
yeah,
And I'll leave you with this analogy when people visualize it, right? Think about a GPS. And you say, okay, a GPS tells you where you're going to go. That is correct. But before it can tell you where you want to go, guess what you have to do? You have to put in the destination.
yeah. You got to put it in. Put it in.
You got to put it in because the GPS, you sit in the car, you waiting on the GPS to tell. So you have to know the direction that you want this process of forgiveness to take you. You have to know the direction because whether it's directed at yourself or directed at someone else, you have to take those steps. You have to recognize that again, that there was a breach. You have to understand your
Yeah,
duty in that concept. You have to understand what was the causation in that process, and finally you have to rectify those damages. And for me, I like that to be quick, but I know, right, I'm not
yeah. Me
naive
too.
enough to
Me
think that
too.
it's a fast process. It is a process that takes what we loop back to before,
Time,
time.
time.
That's what
It
it
takes.
takes.
Yeah, brother. It takes time, and you and I have talked at length, and there's a underbelly to this conversation as well. That and I always talk about me, and Dr. Batz, Dr. Batz has a lot of things going on in his life that he may not have the ability to talk about some of the things, but um, you know, some of my behaviors in 2015 caught up to me, and they have destroyed a friendship.
Mm.
And the hard part about that is you want a quick resolution to something. Like you want your family, your brother to come back, right?
Mm-hmm.
and to quickly come back because, hey, that's not me. That's not me anymore. But the pain cause is new, fresh, and forgiveness potential. I'll give it potentiality. Potential forgiveness takes time when you want to rush to this. And it is interesting because you and I have talked about the spirit, and it is interesting how and I talk about this from an equitable perspective in my language, right? Is that God in the universe, right? When you're asking for something, and this conversation that we had, when you're asking for something, God, the universe, whatever you believe it is going to place things in front of you to say, okay, are you truly do you truly have the ability to give what you're asking for, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it is interesting, and I'll tell this story, is that I've been asking for forgiveness. Telling this story, please forgive me. This is not who I am at this juncture. And the universe was like, oh, okay, let me really see if you're true about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting in an office space a couple weeks ago, and I just happened to look out the window. Dr. Batz, at this, opportune time. And I said to myself, man, I know that walk. I know this walk, Dr. Batz. I hadn't seen the walk in years, maybe 20 years. I hadn't
Wow.
seen the walk.
That's crazy.
Yeah, hadn't seen the walk. I was like, wow, I think that's my former, and I say this, I think that's my former friend. And this person had egreged me at a period of time in my life when I was younger. And I was like, oh, this is what you gonna do, God? This is what you gonna do. So I got out of my seat. And I ran to the door and I yelled this person's name, and in fact, it was him. And I was like, well, okay. So we rapped for a few minutes. And I think I keep saying we. I think I wanted to know, are you still the same person? Because I know you have egreged a whole lot of folks. It wasn't just me. You've egreged a whole lot of folks. But in my mind, I was like, if I'm asking for forgiveness for something that I've done, I've got to ask these questions. Did what you do truly harm me? What did I lose from what you did to me? Did I actually really lose anything? Someone die? Did I lose money? And I was like, no, none of that happened. So in my heart, I had to say, if I'm asking for forgiveness, Dr. Batz, after 20 years, can I forgive this man? And I should have forgiven him by this time. It's been 20
Mm-hmm.
years.
Yeah. It's been 20 years, brother.
It's been 20 years. And so we rapped for a little while, and I was like, you know what? Do you want to get lunch? Can we get together sometime and just figure out what's going on in your life, right? And I was like, okay. God was like, okay, you ain't just gonna get one test. you ain't gonna just get one test, right? So I'm at another event, maybe a week later,
Mm-hmm.
and I see another dude, right,
There
that
you
had
go.
egreged me, right, just by his words, just by his words, said, and that's between me and him, but just by his words. But I had to ask myself the same thing at the end of the day: did someone die? Did I
Mm.
lose any money? Did anything happen to my family? Right? Did I couldn't go anywhere because of this? All of the answers would no. Did my life change drastically because of this? And I was like, no. And even if I could answer yes to any of those questions, at this stage of life, Dr. Batz, did it really matter? Because I'm still Dr. Corporal. I'm still a real
Right.
estate investor. I'm still an investor in underrepresented founders.
Mm-hmm.
I've done all the things in my life. And so we actually got together, laughed and kikied and reminisced. And I'm on my way home, and I know this is a long diatribe, Revolutionaries. I'm on my
No,
way
it's all
home. I'm like,
good.
okay, God, I see you. I see you. I'm asking for forgiveness of something that I had done a long time ago. I'm asking for forgiveness now, but you saying, okay, are you really about your business? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's so interesting to understand that, like, We have been different versions of ourselves. We can atone. We can get better. We can be a revolution. And so it was really, really interesting having to work through the mental gymnastics of, can I forgive you now? Yeah. Yes, I can. Because at the end of the day, my life went on.
Right. And I think that when and this came to me as we were talking, I don't know what we're gonna title this discussion, but these phases of forgiveness, right?
Mhm.
First understanding the problem, and that's that whole, kind of construct of breach, duty, causation, and damages. But then understanding that forgiveness and again grace have a proportional relationship. It's
Tell
interesting
that story.
because the more you forgive, the more grace that is often bestowed upon you. And so, whatever your beliefs, I'm of the Christian faith. So, whatever God puts in front of you to say, I'm going to give you this test to see if you even deserve a little
Mhm.
piece of forgiveness from the person that you want. Because it's just like I tell my athletes, right? The two things in life you can never get back are time and opportunity.
Time and
And what
opportunity.
was provided to you during both those instances was an opportunity that wasn't there over all that time. And had you not taken advantage of it, it might have led things down a different. Now, ultimately, the will is going to happen, whatever is going to happen. But I feel like we have a way of shifting that construct of predestination to some degree. And just to say predestined means that you can't change it. But I don't know. I disagree because I don't think there are fixed or finite decisions. I think we have a role in embracing the forgiveness that we receive by the grace that we give. It
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
directly proportional construct that exists. And I think those were two steps in that next phase
Yeah.
of forgiveness in that
Yeah.
space.
You're exactly right, and we will begin to land this plane on forgiveness is that grace, and I think that I have been giving more grace to people. I've been giving more grace to folks, like, like, because that initial reaction was, oh, that's messed up, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just give you some grace. Right?
Right.
Because I don't know what you're going. Look, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know if this is still the version of you. Like, I'm gonna give you some grace, and I'm gonna keep it moving. And the reality is, as I said, as we land this plane, is that we're gonna lose some people. You know, and
Hmm.
that's gonna be okay too. We may not want to lose folks in our lives. They may have been significant people in your lives. you know, and they have their own walk and they have their own journey too. And forgive them for not forgiving you, you know.
Right.
Um, but the grace there is grace, in understanding that we're all human, that we're all going to make some missteps in our lives. We're gonna make mistakes. But as I said at the earlier point of this, if you can be self-aware and grow and ask yourself, what's my revolution? And then go out and take our 5 steps and fulfill that revolution, you can be a much stronger version of yourself. And
Hmm.
as you and I talk about all the time, you and I both are standing on those versions of ourselves that decided that, you know what, we don't want to be here anymore. You got this. We out.
And I like, and so when you talk about grace, there may be folks out there to say, so what is grace? Because we've
Tell
talked
that
about
story.
abstract constructs.
Mm.
And simply put, in grace, I'm going to add another little piece to it. They got a cousin called mercy. But what grace is forgiveness undeserved, right? Those two
Mm.
people that you saw in your head by based on everything they did really didn't deserve you to kind of chop it up and say, you know what, I'm gonna drop it. But that is grace. But mercy on the other side is punishment unyielded. Right, when you dial back what you could give, and I think the
Yeah.
reason why, and then when it goes back, so this is that whole transitive property of equality, where A equals B, but B equals C. So ultimately A equals C. So forgiveness and mercy kind of walk hand in hand. And all of those are in that same construct. So when we think about these phases of forgiveness, it is understanding, okay, what I did and what I expect. And then it is, how do I yield grace? And then finally understanding, looking back on how you move forward, right? Because now when that person cuts you off in traffic, or that person takes the, I don't know, I don't get too spun up on things, right? I try not to, right? Because I don't want my cortisol to go up, my stress hormone to get crazy. I'm not going to let those things be an issue for me, but it is understand how I deliver mercy as well.
Yeah.
And in that construct, you create a bubble. Now, you talked about you're going to lose some people because you're going to, and interestingly, you'll lose some people. This is where it gets scary for doing the right thing. Because some people will say, oh man, if that was me, they would have got this smoke. They would have did that. They would have did, people get upset because you don't come, hard in a sense. And I say that for
Yeah.
lack of a better term.
Temper justice with mercy.
Yeah. And so you're going to lose some people in the circle for that. You're going to lose some people in the circle because you accepted someone back. But
Yeah.
what we talked about in that whole discussion previous, this is back to the conscious leadership discussion,
Yeah.
where it
George
talks
10.
about changing that circle as you start to move and understanding that sometimes you need different people in your lives at different times. Just like when you build that boardroom table, if everybody has this whole kind of this homogeneous thought process, the business or the corporation will never move forward. You need heterogeneity of thought to really
Yeah.
drive that. The same thing holds true with the people you have around you, right? You need those different people to identify. You ready for this? Is another coaching story, to identify your blind spots,
Yeah.
right? So that
Yeah.
you can move
Yeah.
forward and be prepared as you develop those newer versions of yourself.
Yeah. 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 And that's the thing. What does this new version of yourself look like? And how do you show up for yourself and others? How do you give yourself grace? Knowing that sometimes the old versions will try to creep back in. They be knocking on the door. Yo, it's cold out here, bruh.
Yeah.
Like, we've been out here a long time.
Let us in.
What's going on?
Holla
Hey,
at your
I
boy,
told
man.
look,
I'm
look,
here,
look.
man.
Yeah, look. I'm saying, look. This ain't the place for you no more.
Yeah.
Look. This ain't for you. We don't comport ourselves like that no more.
We don't
So
roll like that.
no,
Yeah.
I still might have that black biker jacket, but the attitude that goes along with it is gone.
Gone.
You
Out.
know what I'm saying? It's out. Nah, I appreciate that, bro. You know what I'm saying? We've had a very interesting, road over the last couple of weeks. I want to give a understanding that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Um,
Yes.
it is also cardiovascular awareness month.
Sudden cardiac arrest awareness month. That's
Sudden
the other
cardiac
month it is.
arrest. That's right. That's
Yes.
right. Yeah, that is definitely right. And shout out to all those warriors who are out there who are fighting, fighting the good fight when it comes to trying to figure out how to overcome these debilitating
Right.
health scenarios that are going on in the world. And nobody better than you, Dr. Batz, especially when it comes to the latter of the studying cardiac arrest, is that what we can do as a populace. Love these
Right.
big words, man. As a populace, to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. Interestingly enough, because I'm going to weave this into one of my favorite conversations I know you have listened to, is that the Michael Unbroken episode was just
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I would like, you think about trauma. You think about trauma's place in our lives, and we as a populace in our larger population, as Black men, and the trauma that we face and its implications on our overall health and our cardiac health. It's so interesting to me to think about this brother in his mid-30s has figured out a way how to turn trauma into triumph. Yeah. Speak on that. That was interesting to me. Like, he went in. I kind of felt like I was like interviewing like David Goggins 2.0. You know what I'm saying?
No, I had the pleasure of listening to the episode, and when I remember kind of his backstory, right? Because there's always, it's all, and think about it, like, so those of you, so I'm a visual person. So think when he was talking, I could envision a superhero. You
Yeah.
say, why you say that? So every superhero has their origin story. They had to come from something or somewhere to attain the superpowers that they have.
Yeah.
And for him, his first pathway, he thought, well, I can fix all these problems if I just make more money. And he tells
Right.
this story of he had the money, he was over, but he, $500 suits, blowing
Yeah.
money here, doing that. But when he really looked introspectively, he wasn't the person he wanted to be.
Yeah.
And then as he continued to reevaluate what he did, he first had to say, and I don't usually, this isn't the place I want to be.
Yeah.
I have
The
to
same,
decide where
same, same, same thing. Same thing I said.
yeah. And, and
Yeah.
and at that point, he said, okay, what do I do? Because he said a lot of people, sit and say, well, this caused it, or, I'll talk about health issues, and not that I am under mining the construct of the social determinants of health. Yes, they are real, right? However, we do have the ability to choose what we put into our body. Walking is free. Water is free. And those
Yeah.
are two small interventions that can lower your risk of probably every, I guess, lifestyle borne disease across the world, right? And so what he did was first had to say, I'm the reason for X. And then from there, identify it and move forward. Even
Yeah.
though the past was what it was, and it created that environment that helped him. And then from there, he just skyrocketed. And the one thing that I really liked about his story or his discussion was that once he reached a goals plateau or a success plateau, he didn't just say, you know what, I'm on cruise control. I
No,
hit
you want to
I
reach
hit where I
back.
needed to go.
Want to
He
reach
kept
back.
exactly. He kept going and he looked, okay, where can I reach back and pull other folks
Mhm.
with me? Because he realized that he couldn't complete his vision by himself, right? Because it would have
Yeah.
been too small. It had to
Yeah.
be bigger than who he was.
Yeah. That's the thing. Again, if we're thinking about our 5 tenets, you know what I'm saying? Your revolution is not just for you.
Mm-hmm.
You think about that, and your revolution is not just for you. And his life story is so like that brother could be dead in a gutter, drugged out, stressed
Right.
out, you know what I'm saying? Paranoid, schizophrenic,
Mm-hmm.
trauma fueled, all behaviors, everything. And to make sure that, right, let's bring it around to us as humans, like we have the power to tell our own narrative.
Right.
And let me say that again. We have the power to tell our own narrative, particularly coming from something
Mm-hmm.
and going somewhere else, right? Everybody kind of loves like that story. Like, nobody's heard. Everybody, nobody's heard. What do you mean, Dr. Corporal walked into his therapist's office and said he was a piece of shit? What? Not Dr. Corporal. Not the intense intellectual. You know what I'm saying? With his pristine, crisp shirts and his white shirts and suits, and he's always tailored and he's always so well
All
manicured
right,
and
all
all the
right, all
different
right.
things. And oh yeah, no, if you only knew, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And each of us has a story. Each of us has a backstory about who we are. It is how we use that story, as Michael has said, how we use that story to fuel us one way or the other. That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
How do we use our story to fuel us one way or the other? And I asked him, I don't know if, I don't even know if I asked him on the show. Maybe I do. I do ask him on the show. It's like, how did you get to Michael Unbroken? And we said, Mike, he did say, he said, Michael Anthony was already taken. So
Right, right.
Michael Unbroken. But you think about that. To walk in a world where you know that I've experienced these things, but you can't break me now. You
Wow.
can't break me.
Mm-hmm.
It is almost like this, Doc. It's like it is almost like each of us needs to walk around like I'm Travis unbroken. I'm Charles unbroken. I'm Sheethel unbroken. I'm Grace unbroken. I'm Amber unbroken. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm Quince unbroken. Something, right? And I'm naming all the people in my, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's all
Um,
good.
but you know what I'm saying? Because I think if we put that language into who we are, one, I think it gives us grace.
Right.
Two, it allows us to forgive ourselves. If this conversation is called the power of forgiveness, the theme around if we're unbroken, it allows us to forgive ourselves of our past, right? To allows us to
Mm-hmm.
mend this, but also to armor ourselves, right? To armor ourselves to take on the world. I am unbroken. My armor is up. and I am shielded. I am shame resistant, shame resilient. I'm shame.
Hmm.
You can't break me. Say whatever you want. It will drip down me like water.
And I think that concept is so powerful. Just words have power,
Mhm.
right? However you choose to use them. Word, they say sticks and stones. Words have power, and I think one of your shows, I ain't great with names, but it was where they started to use the vernacular king and queen and referring to. I think he was
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
disciples.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That was yeah, yeah. Quran.
yeah, and
Yeah,
from that
Quran Smith.
show, yeah, and I was in Florida for one of my kids' events, and the driver, we developed a relationship, and he started saying, "Well, I use that term just so I'm empowering somebody just by those words."
Yeah,
Because if you think
yeah,
about yourself as a king, there's certain things that kings won't do. There's certain things that queens won't do. When you tell yourself, you go into that meeting and you know you're the only one that's rooting for the cause that you want, and you're in a room not of advocates but of adversaries, and you go in before that, you say, "I'm
yeah,
Travis, I'm broken. I'm Charles, I'm broken. I'm,"
yeah,
and you go in there, no matter what they do, right? You're gonna win. You
yeah,
win, right? Because
yeah.
whether they make the choice to pick what you want or to champion your cause, you understand that you gave what you had, both emotionally, both mentally, and
Mhm.
physically, and you can leave there feeling accomplished in that sense.
Yeah,
It goes back to now, again, this is me bringing sports in because I love it. Michael Jordan was once asked, "What is your greatest, kind of skill? Is it how high you jump? Is it how fast you run? Is it how accurate you shoot?" And he said, "No, it's having a short memory." And it
yeah,
never really
yeah.
dawned on me, but it was, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to stumble on your pathway to forgiveness. And you don't want to forget the mistake that you made, but at the same time, move on, evolve, be
Yes.
that next person. And when you are truly unbroken, those things you lock away in a backpack and you got them, you can't get rid of them,
No.
but you're moving on to add new experiences to
Yeah,
outweigh those ones where you weren't those versions of yourself that you
yeah,
wanted.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, yeah, having a short memory, and I think that part of the things that I need to continue to work on is the rumination part when I make a mistake. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's funny at the recording of a show, everybody, most people close to me know that I've been playing some form of baseball or softball all of my life,
Hmm.
literally since I was a child. Loved the game, loved playing the game. Have played uh, almost every position, particularly in softball. Love the game. Well, for some reason, I didn't play the game for an entire year. My team usually we play when we're in New Orleans, we played 45 weeks of the year,
My goodness.
and so I mean, just played 45 weeks of the year. Got home here to Virginia and we played 16 weeks of the year, so almost a third.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah, it's up on me. But for some reason, my team we ended up playing at the end of last fall, and we didn't play the spring. So I hadn't played softball in 10 months. Oh, I played all of
man.
52 this year, right? I played all of 52. I remember last year, right? You talk about short memory. I ended the season, right, playing shortstop, making a running catch over my head, right? To make the third out of the last game of the season, just throwing the ball down.
That's
Man, I couldn't
wild.
even look. I couldn't feel the yo-yo that was hanging right in front of me. Let me tell you, that's how bad I was this year. But the part is that, as you said, is having a short memory and
Hmm.
just being able to go and just being able to move on and be willing to be bad. I was reading an article by Ryan. They were talking about Ryan Reynolds, who's
Hmm.
probably one of my favorite actors. He's and his personality and humor is just second to none. But this Joker has sold 2 companies, or 4, is it 4? No, he's sold 2
Wow.
companies over the last 4 years for $2 billion.
Mm.
$2 billion. Look,
Two billion.
$2 billion. $2 billion. And one of the things that he talks about in the article is that you'll never be good at anything if you can't be bad at it first.
Oh, I like that.
That if you can't be bad at it first. And you know what? I basically after a year, I was really, really bad. It was really, really bad. but I had to give myself grace. I had to give myself grace. I had to forgive myself for not, you know what I'm saying? I had to forgive myself
Hmm.
for making a copious amount of errors. And I
Hmm.
just had to go out and say, you know what? I'm going to be bad, but if I put the work in. That's the whole crux of this. That's the
Yes.
revolution right
Put the
there,
work in.
is the putting the work in. Because if I look at that 2015 version of myself, if I don't put the work in,
You would stay the same.
I would stay this. I'm not. Right. And I'm not that person. But the hard part of this, the hard part of this is being, because I had to be bad at being good. Right. I had to
Hmm.
figure out what it looked like to be a better version of myself. Well, I
Right.
don't really know how to do this. I don't really know how to ask these questions. Right. I don't like. This is hard. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this hard work. I don't want to see me. And that's the thing. If you can't be bad at something as you grow, you're never going to be good at it.
Right.
Dr. Batz knows, and we've talked about the litany of awards and accolades that come along with being Dr. Travis Batz. So Dr. Travis Batz, I'm sure, will tell you when he was beginning his journey to be one of the most well-respected cardiologists in the country, he was bad.
Yeah.
He was bad. He probably be like, "No, I was always good. I was always
You
good, you
know.
know."
You
But
know.
but you still had to learn. Talk about,
Right.
speak on that.
No, it's one of those things, and I tell my kids this: um, mediocrity. And I don't want people to think this is elitist talk, but mediocrity is actually an easy choice. It's the easiest choice because all you have to do is figure out what's the bottom, figure out
Yeah.
what's the top, and exist somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But I think for many of us, as we get on this pathway to evolving who we are, present company included, we find that sweet spot and then we are overtaken by complacency. Because we can say, you know what, I'm not that bad. I didn't do this. I didn't, those four, I didn't kill anyone. I didn't steal anyone's money. I didn't do this, right? But then on the top side, well, I know I'm not perfect, right? But when we exist in that middle space, we don't allow ourselves that idea of first saying, I could be better. How do I
Yeah.
improve, right? And mediocrity is comfortable because you don't make mistakes because you never try anything.
Yeah.
You
Gotta
never
try.
take a risk on being
Yeah.
a better version of you. Because the problem with being a better version, so like when I first started my vegan journey, right? I would go places and people knew how I used to eat. And I would be about to eat and I'd see them eyes like, I'm gonna see if his wife got chicken. He about to eat some of it. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm good eating my
Yeah.
little bit. And it's
Yeah.
people because the eyes are on you. It's one of those things where when I talk to my kids and I say, so what is integrity? And that's doing the right thing when no one's
Yeah.
looking. But it's harder to be, and I think this was on another show too, to have self integrity because you always looking at yourself, but you can't
Yeah.
close your eyes to who you are and what you do and what you think and what you really believe. But that's where you have to say, I know I'm not doing what I need to. I
Yeah.
know I'm not showing up for people like I need to,
Yeah.
and I need to do something.
I
I
need to
need
be
help, or
better.
I need to be better
I need to revolt and
and
evolve.
evolve.
I need to revolt and evolve. And that's the thing. That's the self-awareness journey.
Hmm.
I need to revolt and evolve. And revolutionaries, I promise you, we got this class ready for you. It's coming. It is coming. Our new website is coming. I'm so excited about that. The class is coming where you have the ability to answer, right, the most thought-provoking question of your life. And then we will walk you through this journey of how to fulfill this answer. Revolt and evolve. Know your choice points. Find your midwives like Dr. Batz. Know your revolution is not just for you. And always, always, always be figuring out what's the next revolution of your life. Dr. Bass's time always goes by so
I
fast,
know.
and
Flew by.
yeah, we talk about gratitude as we started this conversation, and I will end it with the same thing, with gratitude for you and who you are. Our fans of this show talk so fervently about what you bring to this, and your eloquence and intellect, right? We did not get an acronym, right? We did not get an acronym this time,
I'm waiting.
Revolution.
I got one. I got
Oh
one.
boy,
You know
oh
I got one.
boy.
It's when you say, "Is there anything else you want to say?" I'm waiting.
Yeah,
I'm
oh, he
waiting
wait, he been
patiently.
holding,
I'm evolving.
he been holding. I'm gonna say what I got to say, and then we're gonna we're gonna pass the ball to my 1911 early in the year, brother. Revolutionaries, we want to make sure that you have what you need to be this version of yourself, right? And so that you can look back and say, you know what, I'm a better version of who I used to be. I don't do the same things that I do. I don't hang out where I used to hang out, right? I show up for myself. I show up for others. And I do that because I get a chance to hear some of the most prolific people talk about their own revolution. I started this show 2 years after walking into a therapist's office and saying I'm a piece of shit. And as I was on my journey, I wanted to look for content that would help me not be a piece of shit. And there wasn't anything there. And so we started the What's Your Revolution show. And almost 7 years later, we're here with you. This versions of ourselves, growing, learning, listening, giving grace to ourselves and others, forgiving ourselves and others as we move into the next revolution of our lives. So thank you for being on this journey with me and my good friend, Dr. Batz. And I'm going to always, as we do here, Revolt and Evolve, give him the last word.
Well, again, this was a wonderful show. These phases of forgiveness, I think we all can apply, whether it's to ourselves, whether it's to the home, whether it's to the boardroom, right? Understanding how to navigate what that space is and determining where you want to be on that realm of forgiveness. This last acronym is one just to say I am proud to be a member of the Association of Black Cardiologists. We are having our annual gala, but before that gala, we have the ability to give back. And I didn't clear this with my host boss, but I just think it is such an impactful program that impacts the Atlanta area. On the weekend of the 27th, 28th of February, we'll be having our annual gala where we promote heart health, but we want to introduce and include that pipeline, whether you're in high school, whether you're undergraduate, and we have the what's called PULSE, PULSE program. It is the pre-college undergraduate life science enrichment program. This is a program where we focus on youth, really engaging them in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, and the arts through the lens of both medical as well as biomedical as well as engineering. And again, it'll be held in Atlanta. If you have any youth in the area that are interested, please visit the Association of Black Cardiologists website, and I'll give that information to Dr. Corporal. But this is such a powerful program to assist in shifting the mindset, improving the language, and moving forward. As we mentioned earlier, October is Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. We'll be highlighting that at the event and having, you ready for this, a survivor of sudden cardiac arrest. A 14-year-old young man scored the winning touchdown and collapsed on the field. And since then, he's been on a journey, his own personal revolution of trying to figure out what normal is. Since that time, he's had open heart surgery, a defibrillator placed, and we will get to hear his story and talk about that. He's I've adopted him as a nephew, so to speak, because I realize that many of the things we talk about aren't tangible unless you deliver some of that revolution to someone else. Yeah. So whether you're out there thinking the space that you want to revolt in is too large and where you fit, I tell you, do the first thing, and that's take your first step to your own revolution.
And on that note, we will see you next time. You know that Dr. Batz and I love you and that we're here for you and that we're both asking you to be able to answer to what we think is the most thought-provoking question of your life. What's your revolution?
What's your revolution?
We'll see you next time. Talk to everybody.